Alrighty, good morning, everybody. We have made it to October, and it is October 2nd, 2023. Let's do a quick review of Friday so we could get into the pre-market for this morning and this month. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here to Friday's price action here. Give me a second. So what did we talk about on Friday? I believe on Friday we said there were a couple scenarios that we were talking about here. And actually, let me pull up the 60-minute so we can look at that. We were talking about how, first of all, we came down, we made a nice measured move. We had this big push down from the high of the year. We got a major bounce, and then we got the second part of the leg down. And we talked about there being a beautiful measured move right down into this pocket of the two major retracements that we were trading around. And we talked about the area around 42.90 to 43.10, give or take a few points there, as being a major area for support in the market. Measured move, multiple fibs lining up there. And if you zoom back to previous price action from that area, major resistance in the market. So, right, we talked about that last week and maybe even the week before. And we said that it would make a lot of sense for the market to try and bounce out of there. And so what happened was they peaked right through it just a little bit, and we found support, and the market started bouncing. Now, going into Friday, this is what we saw on the hourly chart. We talked about, having the potential for that daily bullish signal if we were to compare to all these previous lows that were much lower in price compared to where it is now. And seeing this, divergence setting up, looking at RVI. And I told you it's not necessarily my favorite type of divergence, trying to compare stuff from so long ago there, but it was technically there. We talked about this potential pattern setting up where we get the bounce from our expected area of support. It fails, comes down to either retest the low of last week, break through it just a little bit, make a slightly lower low, and we would get some divergence on the daily, giving me more confidence in a larger rotation higher. So I told you last week multiple times, I did expect there to be some type of attempt by the bulls to bounce out from here. We did have the daily. We did have even weekly potential divergence showing up from last week's low. And then we had the 4-hour and hourly all showing bullish signals from there. So we did have a lot of clues for a potential bounce. But I warned you last week, this is the type of pattern I would much rather see from the low to give me more confidence in a larger rotation higher. And it looks like we may be on the way down to come down and do that very thing this week. So we were talking about that. And then I was also talking about how even though we were in a bounce, we did have a clue on the hourly time frame just before the market was about to open on Friday that there could be a little bit of a pullback, right? So we were getting a stronger bounce. There were some clues for maybe a pullback coming into the open on Friday. And then there was still plenty of clues for the bulls to go ahead and continue to try to push higher. And I think I told you 4,400 was more than likely going to be the pocket that made the most sense for a bigger failure down. So what happened out of the open here? The market just sold off. So that bearish signal we saw on the hourly chart that I warned you about just before the market opened, and I said this could lead to some type of pullback. It might just be a little micro 5-10 point pullback. We could be pulling back a little deeper to find some support off one of the other levels on our chart to then attempt to come up to that 4,400 area. Well, what happened was the market opened, and that bearish signal that we saw and anticipated just before the market opened ended up just being kind of the story for the day, right? So it held the highs of the overnight session, and I believe I even said if we can't break the high of the overnight session, we do have potential divergence forming there. So that might be your clue for a sell-off or a pullback. And that's basically how Friday went. So let's look at the details really quickly here. You guys saw I did post a video where I got short when the market failed soon after the open. So I want to show you what happened there and maybe my thought process, even though I did basically explain it in that little short video on Friday on the YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel. But the market opened, and as you can see, we tested into the overnight high, which was basically here, where the hourly bearish signal was showing. Just tested into it, couple ticks, and then it just started to fail from there. So good opportunities to get short out of the open here off the FMA on these two tests, and never really came back to stop you out for this decent pullback. It only got about, let's say you got short from one of these highs, only got about 10 points in your favor before we got this second attempt by the bulls to kind of come up and try to break out to the upside. So we got a really healthy pullback, which is what you would expect with that hourly bearish signal up there. We bounced, unfortunately, not right off VWAP, but just a point or two in front of it there. In fact, it was literally just 1 point in front of VWAP. And then again, got this attempt by the bulls to break out. And as you can see, once we got through the scaffolding, we held the scaffolding to the downside here once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. So there were some decent little trades you could have tried off of there. There just wasn't a lot of follow through. You might have got, say you shorted 63.75. The most you really could have got out of it was maybe a 5-point pullback. But we attempted to pop, right? And then right here, when I was watching the market here on Friday, I saw something very clear, and that was we attempted to break out back to the upside, and we started to fail right in front of the high of the day before. If you guys remember, we talked in a webinar a couple weeks back about getting these patterns where the market pushes to an ultimate high. We get a nice healthy pullback. It bounces and then comes up and fails, not a double top, not a higher high, but literally just kind of in front. And you could argue this is basically a double top for all intents and purposes. But this very specific issue or example of getting up and not quite getting to the major high that we're comparing with, and then the whole bottom drops out. And this is the very thing I saw in my chart on Friday, and I saw this as well. We look at the 3-minute chart, and we bring this up. Go back to Friday here. This is what I saw on my 3-minute chart. As we were failing from that high that fell just in front of the high of the overnight session there, or high of the regular trading hours, I had this big bearish divergence on my 3-minute chart, and that started to clue me in that, hey, maybe because we had that hourly bearish signal, maybe this is going to be the beginning of a deeper pullback. Again, we don't know what's going to happen next, but we can definitely interpret what price action is telling us and what our signals are telling us. And so that's what I saw. I saw that bearish signal on the 3-minute, saw the failure right in front of the high of the day, and I went down to my 512 tick chart, and I said, hey, if we can pull back, get below the 200 and bounce back up into it, I'm going to try that short because this looks like we're failing. And so I got short literally 64.75. You guys saw it in the video. And then the market made a nice strong push lower. So I was able to capture about 15 points. Of course, it came right back to my entry, literally to the tick. Right, I got short 64.75, came back 65.5. So 3 ticks through my entry, and actually twice, and then finally continued to sell off from there. So I didn't get the final part of my position because it came back to take it out. But definitely great opportunity to short the back end of the 200 there. And then, as you can see, market couldn't really, once we got through the scaffolding to the downside, kind of like earlier in the morning, holding it to the back end multiple times. Then when we got back to it here, just could not really get through. I mean, yeah, there was a little peak, deeper peak through there and a very slight peak through here, but basically could not get through our scaffolding. And then the rally continued to the downside. Great opportunities to short the FMA, short the back end of the Holy Orange power level to the tick, guys. How many times do these setups happen? Nearly every day. Off the Hopal here, you could have shorted Hopal once, twice, 3 times and took about 1 or 2 ticks of heat, and you would have captured the rest of the sell-off. And this is, once again, guys, I talk about this all the time. This was a hold off the back end of our first major level on the market, then we fell down and hold the back end of our next major area of expected resistance and push lower. This is that stair step pattern that I've talked about multiple times. And then what do you know? It gets down through our next major roadmap level, our 50%. It comes back and holds it, guys, to the tick. And where do we bounce? Towards the end of the day here for the pretty big rotation at the end of the day. We bounce right off of our scaffolding level. So the high of the day was essentially scaffolding, right? There was definitely a little bit of a peak through there. But basically, we held it here about an hour or two after the open. The market sells off, and we bounce at the end of the day off our next scaffolding. It's like magic. And again, these levels are levels I derive just from previous price action. So we hold there. Again, hold the back end of the 50%. You could have been short in the back end of these major levels as we came back to them with that bearish bias. And then finally, end of the day, it pops, finds rejection right off the scaffolding again. Great hold off the 200. And then eventually, right at the end of the day here, we pop up and basically fell off the close of the day before. Right? So there was a lot of great opportunity on Friday. If you didn't make money, I'm sorry, but we did give you basically all the areas in the chart where we get the major turns, right? So if you can't trade around that and manage your risk and capitalize on these holds, then you got to keep practicing. The promise is there. We've got the areas where the market's going to rotate. Now you just got to work on your entries, your controlling your risk when things aren't working, and hopefully when you have trades that do work, you're letting them follow through for the bigger part of the move. So that wraps up the review for Friday. And then as you can see here in the overnight session, there was actually, I was watching this last night, beautiful pullback right to VWAP for a pop. And this is the trades that we talk about. In fact, out of the open here, out of the Globex open, we pounced right to it. You could have got short here from 46 down to 39 for 5-6 points. Again, didn't follow through for a bigger push, but great opportunity for a short scalp there. And then once it got through to the upside, great opportunity for a long off the VWAP there for just under 10 points, literally like 9 points. And then it's been a little messy ever since, right? Super messy over here. We didn't get a nice sexy hold off the 200 and the 50% level for a bounce. It did peek through it. And now here we are coming into the open, and the market is failing back through VWAP. In fact, it held not only an hour after the Globex open, not only 2-3 hours after the Globex open, but over here, right in the middle of the night, right off of it, and then we failed. So as it failed through, there's your crossover, some great opportunities to short the back end of your FMA. And now here we are, just about ready for the open here, bouncing, interestingly enough, not only to the tick off our scaffolding, but then just a couple ticks or points below, coming down, and now we're getting support off the low of the day before. So there's 2 roadmap levels that you would have had on your chart before the market failed. And look at that, you could have bought, and you would have made money, right? So some great opportunities off these levels, guys. It blows me away every single week, every single day. And let's go ahead. We've kind of spent a lot of time reviewing everything. So let's go ahead and look at what's going on here on the charts for this morning. So I'm going to pull up the higher time frames. I do want to go up to the weekly chart.